my privilege to introduce to you Curtis Foulkes, the Executive Director of the Georgia Ports Authority. Actually, Curtis is the CEO of a $300 million a year business that brings thousands of jobs to Georgia and the Southeast each year. Further, in the last few months, the Ports Authority has presented a strategic plan that shows $1.3 billion of capital to be spent over the next 10 years on our port. Curtis is and has been the driver of this engine. Curtis has a background of work that has prepared him for this job. He worked for railroads, he's worked with shipping companies and other ports throughout the world. He is recognized in the shipping business as one of the most respected members of this industry. When I was first appointed to the Ports Authority, I spent a day with Curtis. As we rode around the Garden City Container Port, I noticed Curtis would speak, wave to all of these employees. Now, these folks were our employees. They were ILA, longshore, or they were independent truckers. Curtis connects with all of them. He also has a very small management team that is second to none in our industry. They all know not only their jobs, but they know each other's jobs. So what's Curtis do for fun? He works. I got him to tell me that he and his wife, Donna, enjoy just being at home. Maybe on a Saturday morning, he'll cut the grass and smoke a cigar. That's about it. One of the finest executives I've met and a great Georgian. Please recognize Curtis Foulkes.
Jimmy, thank you for those very kind remarks. I want to thank everybody for having me here this morning. Most importantly, because I couldn't do it without them, Leah did a great job of setting up all the technology, because I give a lot of speeches, but the one thing I am absolutely know nothing about, that's setting up computers and projectors and all that sort of thing. Anyway, it's great to be here. This is, it's always nice to go around the state of Georgia and share with people a little bit about what our ports do. Now, I'm going to try to keep this to about 20 minutes, as I've been asked to do. I'm a little worried about Jimmy. He got too much of that stuff right. So he was paying a lot of attention on the drive around, and he was obviously listening when he was asking me a story about my wife and I, because that's about what we do on the weekend. But I'll cover this in about 20 minutes, and then should have a little bit of time for questions. I'd be happy to answer about anything anyone would ask me, as long as it's non-political, because we try to stay away from that stuff. We are, and before I get into the presentation, first of all, show of hands for anybody that have been to our ports in Savannah or Brunswick around. All right, that speaks volumes in itself. I would submit to you, go anywhere else in the country, at a city away from the coast, and ask a group like this how many have been to the ports, and you might get 1 or 2 hands out of 200, not whatever we have, about 30 or 35% of the hands are up. Always remember this, your ports aren't about the coast. We happen to be located on the coast, but if you go into almost any retailer, I don't care whether it's Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart or Target, CVS, and you buy goods, it's a good chance that those goods, many of those goods were produced overseas. Most of them were produced somewhere in Asia, or in Europe, or Latin America. Or if you produce anything in this country that you want to sell overseas, if it's not of a high enough end that you want to air freight it, that you're going to ship it overseas and compete, that's going through our ports. So I tell people, forget about the Port of Savannah or the Port of Brunswick. Think of us as we are the Georgia Ports Authority. We're just as much Port Dublin or Port Atlanta or Port Macon, kind of on and on and on. So think of us as an economic extension of what you do in commerce, or from an economic development standpoint. That's what we represent. All right, quick story about what we've done. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. These are some issues that I'm going to cover in the presentation. We have properties in 4 different locations. Most people know us for what we do in Savannah. We have 2 deep water ports in Savannah. I'll cover a little bit about them. We've also got great assets, a great portfolio of assets, a franchise down in Brunswick with 3 different terminals. They're all different. They service different lines of business, or they're a different economic development type of an opportunity. We've got an inland port in Bainbridge, and then we just own basically an asset in Columbus that candidly we're probably looking to give back to the community. All right, very quickly, our terminals down in Brunswick. This is Mayor's Point Terminal. It's basically there to service the forest products export business or export industry. 2 or 3 ships a month come there and ship Georgian forest products, and really, I'd say a little bit of North Florida and some in Alabama, but mostly it's here to service the forest products industry in the state of Georgia, down in Brunswick. Our largest asset in Brunswick is our Colonel's Island Terminal, 2 lines of business there. We do a lot of auto processing. A couple of fast facts I think that will surprise many of you. Last year we shipped 635,000 new automobiles through there. Vast majority of those were imports. About 500,000 imports, about 120, 130,000 were export. Another interesting fact through there, and who would have ever imagined this? Last year we shipped 70,000 brand new Mercedes-Benz that were built in Vance, Alabama, out of there going back to Europe to be sold in the European market now. How would you figure that? Mercedes-Benz being built here in the United States. But anyway, we have become the 2nd largest auto processing port in the United States. We're bringing automobiles in or out of this country. We're number 1 in terms of import automobiles. So a big economic engine, not only for that region, but for the entire state. We've also got in the center there that's kind of hard to see. Switch this so I can operate this with my hand. In the center, right in this location, there is an agribulk facility where we handle dry goods, dry agribulk. We'll ship about 1 million tons of ag product through it on an annual basis. So all in all, good business opportunities and a lot of room for future growth down in Brunswick, this facility. Our 3rd facility in Brunswick is one we lease out. That's unique because most of what we do as an authority, we're not only the typical port model in the United States is that the Port Authority owns the assets on behalf of the state, but they lease them to others to operate. We basically, our primary model is not only are we charged with owning the assets on behalf of the state, but we also operate them with Ports Authority employees. This is one that we actually lease out to a third party. It's a Canadian firm. They handle a little bit of everything, general cargo type goods. This is our primary facility, Port Authority facility, that we're shipping out wood pellets or wood chips for the biomass type business that's starting to grow, most of them going to North Europe. All right, shifting to Savannah, and then I'll get into some stats. Quick covering our facilities. This is our Ocean Terminal facility in Savannah. It's a general cargo facility, so when you think of steel, lumber, crude rubber, large mining machinery, Caterpillar machinery. We're Caterpillar's #1 port in the United States for export. John Deere, that type of equipment, both import and export, moved through this facility in Savannah. It's a great piece of the portfolio to be able to have a separate terminal that we can market those activities for and not kind of bump up against what is our 800-pound gorilla, which is the next facility, which is our container facility. This is our largest asset on the state, and Canada, the largest economic engine that we have. We can offer to the state from an economic development standpoint. This is what we call our Garden City terminal. It's in the city. It's in Garden City, but it's our container facility. It is the single largest in the United States. It's on 1,200 acres. This year we'll handle, and this is an acronym that very few of you will recognize, but our space, we measure containers in 20-foot equivalent units, TEUs. And last year we handled over 3 million of those units, 3 million TEUs through here. So you want to see a busy day or a normal day, you go down to these terminals, and trucks coming in and out of this one facility, we'll do over 8,000 trucks a day. We'll load and unload off ships another 6,000 containers, and we'll load or unload off rail another 1,000 to 1,500 containers. So on any given day, we're handling or moving around about 20,000 containers. And most of the rest of the presentation, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about kind of Garden City. A quick update on how we're doing, and we haven't shared this with our board yet, Mr. Allgood, but you'll get some of these stats our upcoming board meeting in 6 days. But your ports are healthy, certainly outgrowing the rest of the country. And you know, that's hard to do when we've grown as large as we've become. We're no longer kind of this sleepy little port throughout the state. But for the first 8 months, we run on a mid-year fiscal year, just like the state of Georgia does. Our total tonnage, so everything we handle, up 7.6%. So for the first 8 months, handled 19.2 million tons. For the first 8 months, our container volumes were up 6.2%. Autos and machinery, up 5.6%. Our rail containers that we handled, so intermodal, we call it, rail activity associated with our container volumes, up 6.5%, and then bulk activity up 6.6%. So there's every single line of business that we measure, every metric that we measure, we're experiencing positive growth for the first 8 months of the year. Probably, well, I'll tell you for sure, the only port in the United States that could claim that, and pretty strong growth overall. So a real good year for us. And none of this is moved on an assembly line or with electronic machines. It takes people to move this stuff. And so as you see volumes go up like this, it's purely associated to jobs. So a huge economic job growth tied to port activity throughout the entire state that we've experienced so far for the first 8 months. Just kind of maybe a commercial about the state itself and what we do. This is done by the Terry College of Business. Every 2 years they look at our port system on behalf of the state and say, what does a port mean to the state in terms of jobs? Now, I also want you to think, when you think about the ports, because I spent a lot of time talking about it, and Congressman Barrow has heard it and has certainly helped us with this message. Georgia's ports aren't just about Georgia. The economic impacts of our ports don't stop at the state borders. We become a gateway for commerce, whether you're shipping automobiles, whether you're shipping agribulk, whether you're shipping containers, really for commerce in the entire Southeast. But this is the impact on Georgia, or this is what Terry College of Business says. When this last report was done, now it's dated by about 1.5 years now, so the numbers will be up, about 352,000 jobs in Georgia are tied to port-related activity. And I won't go through these larger kind of sales and federal numbers, but this is another one that kind of stands out to me. About $18.5 billion of income for Georgians every year are derived from kind of port-related activity or port-related jobs. As I mentioned, we are not just a coastal entity. What we do touches every corner of the state. And in that economic study that Terry College of Business did, these are the different areas within each of these regions. We kind of break it down throughout Georgia, and these are the jobs associated with it. So in the heart of Georgia here, you can see 10,500 jobs. Again, are tied to port-related activity, part of that larger $352,000 job number. Look at the number in and around Atlanta. Obviously a huge impact on jobs, 157,000 jobs up and around that area. And like I tell people all the time, you're not going to move Atlanta. So if you're someone, and you know, Mr. Olga and I were talking about it a little earlier, you think about that larger Atlanta, our kind of, this isn't meant to be derogatory, our New York City of the South. You know, it's all about demographics. And so that's when I look at this area, and I know our economic development teams are working together, you know, you're strategically extremely well located to tap into that demographic growth up there from a distribution kind of retail sector side. So it's something we'll continue to work with you very closely. Just an idea of the different distribution centers that have been set up throughout the state that are tied to the port, that have chosen or selected our ports to get their goods to consumers throughout the region. There are over 200 in the state today. You think about numbers, and they sometimes are mind-boggling. Walmart almost ships 125 containers every single day through our port. And that multiplier effect of those jobs throughout. We are their poster child kind of in the United States. The Kia plant in West Point, Georgia. You know, everybody thinks about the the economic impact of that manufacturing plant that's been set up. They ship every day, about 5 days a week, about 80 to 100 containers of import parts and products going into that area. And then those goods are trucked up to that region. So when you look throughout the state, think of all these companies that are taking advantage of our ports system. Something we're very proud of, if you look at the last decade, Savannah has basically grown, our container port has grown from this sleepy little port that a decade ago wouldn't have been in the top 10 in the United States. And now if you look at the United States, it's about 24-25% of world GDP. Savannah is the 4th busiest container port in the nation. And not just the 4th busiest today, we've been the fastest growing. So this again is that acronym, 20-foot equivalent units, TEUs. In 2003, we had a 1.5 million TEUs. This year, 3 million TEUs for a compounded annual growth rate of about 7.2%. And as you can see here, more than double on an annual basis the next fastest growing port in the country. Another one that people quite often look at is the only one in red, which is our neighbor to the north of us. The ports in South Carolina in 2003 handled 1.7 million TEUs. Today they handle 1.6. So they're the only port in the top 10 in the country that have actually shrunk. So it is, they obviously blame us for their demise, but I will candidly tell you, I worked in Charleston when I was on the private sector side, worked there for 2 years in the kind of the mid-90s. And it's not because of what we've taken from them. We've grown our business the right way. We've reached across the country. The cargo that used to come from Southern California all the way to the East Coast and offered a transportation solution or a logistics solution that was candidly a better solution. Bring the goods either through the Panama Canal around the world the other way, through the Suez Canal, to our ports, eliminate all that overland transportation costs and environmental impact, and get closer to the consumer. And that's where we've grown. Now, both South Carolina ports and many of their elected officials, again, claim that we've taken their business, and it's just not factual. They've got some structural things they need to fix. And in my career, most of it's been on the private sector side, and I've worked on both coasts and up and down the East Coast and in the Gulf. I've yet to see a state that gets it any better than Georgia gets it. We don't allow kind of partisan politics to come into play. We are a nonpartisan organization. Our entire staff is made up of private sector experts that have been brought in from the private sector to come run it. I'm not a state of Georgia employee. I don't receive a state pension. I'm not a part of the state health care benefits. We're responsible for funding all of that 100% as an authority on revenues that we generate, and neither are the 1,000 people that work for us. So it is a great model that's worked extremely well and something that we want to continue to promote. But we're real proud to have been the fastest growing port in the country. Big job impact. If you look up and down the East Coast, just to kind of put it in perspective, these are the number of weekly vessels, container vessels, that are calling the major ports up and down the coast. And you can see that it's really just us in New York that stand out. New York, New Jersey, the combined ports of those two states have 42 weekly vessels coming to their ports on container vessels. Now, that's all we're talking about here. And Little Savannah's got 37. And so it's something that we're in very good league there. If you go down and spend any time on the waterfront along the river in Savannah, you're almost guaranteed to see ships coming up or down multiple times a day. Mr. Allgood referenced it, about a $1.4 billion CapEx spend. This is what it represents, kind of each of the projects. But one of the other things that makes us unique, and this is money that we're generating again on business we handle, is we're the only port in the country that has taken kind of this long-term vision and approach to what we need to do strategically over the next decade or so. So every 2 years we do an updated or a new 10-year plan. And it starts with the demand side of the equation, working with economists, what can we expect to handle. That then translates into our engineering group. Okay, if that's the volume, These are the projects you're going to need to do to handle it efficiently. And then finally, those projects result in a spend or expenditures. A multitude of projects, very deep in each of these areas. But the other economic impact you need to think about your ports is not only do we have that immediate job impact, but we spend about $120 million every year reinvesting in new facilities, in expansion, in improved velocity, in technology. So we're plowing that back into the economy. So it's not money that's going back to the state. All the money that we make, we reinvest in growing our business further. So about to the tune of about $120 million a year. This is the region that we tap. So this is our service area. We have great partners in CSX and Norfolk Southern on the railroads. These are all the points within this really 44% of the U.S. population that we aim to serve and we look to servicing every day. So these are the customers we're out trying to draw through this funnel or this gateway in the southeast. We've worked, the state has been outstanding at recognizing that we can't just build a port and deepen our harbors if we can't get it outside of our ports into the kind of the freight system. And if you spend any time going around this country at the other major ports, go to Southern California, go to the Pacific Northwest and Seattle, Tacoma, go to New York, New Jersey, go to Norfolk, you don't want to get within about 10 miles of the ports because it's going to be complete gridlock. We've had the foresight, and this again is one of these things, the state just gets it, that let's tap in to I-95 and I-16, which are outstanding freight corridors, because they're both within 6 miles of our terminal, and let's finish these last mile projects. And that's really what this is. This is the Jimmy Deloach Parkway. Governor Deal supported in the General Assembly, fully funding it last year. It's underway right now. It'll effectively bring I-95 in a dedicated freight corridor directly into our main container terminal. That's unheard of. You don't have that anywhere else in the country. And this is about servicing commerce efficiently for the next 20 to 30 years. This isn't about what we need today. I mean, we do, but it's really having that long-term vision. And what we're going to, our mission is to take I-95 and I-16. This again is being worked on. We're going to work with the governor and the General Assembly on this small connector here, but create a freight beltway that's going to make sure that commerce flows efficiently for many, many years to come. Our Achilles, for sure, is a federal project. We call it SHIP, Savannah Harbor Expansion Project, deepening of the Savannah River. When it probably doesn't mean much to any of you, but just know this, the Savannah River isn't just the shallowest port in the southeast, nor on the East Coast, nor in the United States. It's the shallowest major port in the world, period. Ships are getting bigger. That means they're deeper. Ships are not going to continue to call Savannah like they do today. These large ships are calling, but they're having to sail at about 70% of their capacity because they can't load the ships out because they can't load deeper. They're going to be dragging mud up and down the river. So this project is absolutely vital, and getting it done quickly is critical to continuing to, it's not about growing, but it's just keeping the jobs we've got now. Because if we don't get this resolved, you're not going to continue to get two-thirds or half a ship. You're not going to get that ship at all. It's going to go somewhere else. That's not good for our competitiveness as a nation. It's not good from an environmental standpoint because freight wants to come here. And then it's obviously it's not good to jobs in the state of Georgia. I could talk about this for a long time. I'm not going to get into the details of it. I would expect with the budget that will be passed this year, again, Governor Deal and the General Assembly have done a great job of effectively now over multi-years fully funding the state's portion of this project. This is a $652 million project. Total state share is about $265 million, and we should be there. I'll talk a little bit more about next steps. You don't know what's happening and some of what's driving the urgency of this. Let's see. Panama Canal is going through its first growth in 100 years. The original locks that are currently in place today in Panama were opened in 1914. They haven't grown 1 inch in width, length, or depth since 1914. Well, obviously, ships have gotten larger. So it's going through its first expansion. So today, this depicts the size of ships, 4,400 TEUs, that's that acronym, but they can only be 39.5 feet today, coming through the locks. We get 13 ships every week coming through there. This expansion that will be done, we'll call it in the next 2 years, ships now will be 13 to 14,000 TEUs versus the 4,400. So a little over 3 times the size. But that's the real scary part. It's got a design draft of 50 feet. The locks will be 60 feet deep. So the speed bump, if you want to call it, or the restricted funnel that the Panama Canal represents today disappears in probably going to be 2016. So for us to remain competitive, we've got to get this deepening done as quickly as possible. It's going to represent, and why is it important? It brings down, with these larger ships, better economies of scale, the cost of shipping a container will be reduced, depending upon the ship, from somewhere between 20 and 40%. So it's going to make us competitive, but if the ships can't call our port, you can't take advantage of that competitiveness around the globe. We recognize as we've grown that we've got to do it environmentally responsible. You won't find a port on the East Coast or Gulf. I don't compare ourselves to the West Coast because everything most of what they've done from an environmental standpoint has been mandated. Nobody from New York to Galveston, Texas has the environmental record of improvements that we've done over the last 5 years like we have at the Georgia Ports Authority. But what we're really proud of, not one of those things has been done by a local, state, or federal mandate. We've done it because it's the right way of doing business. And as we grow, we want to lessen our environmental impact on our community. We've introduced all-electric container handling equipment, first in the United States, and our board's just approved a big expansion of that project. Many of you probably don't know, but we ship about 1,300 40-foot containers every single week, 1,300 out of our ports of frozen or refrigerated product. Most of that's frozen poultry, most of that coming from Georgia. So if you don't think about the economic impact of that, it's massive. But we've introduced some new racking systems to handle it more efficiently, but most importantly, more environmentally friendly. Reduced the consumption, just that one project, I think the number's a little over 3 million gallons of diesel fuel every year that we were burning on that. Some major lighting improvements. We were the first port in the country to introduce some new technology that our entire, that 1,200-acre facility now, the light consumption goes up and down based upon the ambient conditions. And then finally, we haven't announced it yet. We will be on Earth Day this year. We've just completed a project that's now, we are capturing and treating all the stormwater runoff off that 1,200 acres. So if you went back 3 years ago, all of that was going in the Savannah River. Today, which comes to an estimate of about 100 million gallons of stormwater runoff a year, is going through a succession of ponds and actually has created wetlands before it's going into the Savannah River. But again, all these have been done because we decided it was the right thing to do. And my last slide, I just wanted to show this because this is where we're at today in Savannah. Container facility, the general cargo facility. The orange and the green are future build sites. So we're trying to think out, okay, what do we need for the next half a century or so? We've got a couple options. The orange site, let me first say, if we don't get cooperation here, and I'll cover that in a second, then we have the ability to expand here, which is a site we just completed purchasing to handle more container traffic in particular. Our preference would be to get South Carolina to enter the sandbox with us and play and jointly develop this site. Now, if you think about confusing projects, this is on about 13,000 acres that the state of Georgia owns in South Carolina. Yep, state of Georgia owns 13,000 acres in South Carolina. Anyway, we think that that's a great long-term solution for container capacity and commerce in the Southeast. We have our challenges dealing with certain bodies in South Carolina, but we're trying to convince them, folks, put that aside. We work better in the southeast versus us and them, and we's the solution they need to approach for the southeast, and hopefully we'll get there.